I caught my wife entwined with her yoga teacher, their betrayal laid bare before my eyes. Anger consumed me as I recorded every sordid detail. Their deceit wasn't just a fling, it was a calculated assault on my trust. My heart shattered. I vowed revenge. I exposed their treachery publicly, watching their smug faces turn to horror. My wife begged for mercy, but I was relentless. Our marriage, her reputation, all destroyed in a heartbeat. This is my story of betrayal and brutal retribution. Witness the fallout. My wife is a beautiful woman, but she makes a silly face just before she finishes. That's what I was thinking when everything started. I was on top of her, doing what we usually do. I loved watching her. Her body moved with mine, and it looked great. I felt a mischievous smile come to my face as I suddenly stopped. The look on her face was priceless. Her eyes widened and her mouth opened. "No, no, no, no!" she cried. "Eric, keep going, I'm almost there!" I moved a little, just enough to let her know I might continue. "Make me feel good, please," she begged. "I'll do anything you want later, just keep." Soon, with a few more movements, she was happy again. I wrapped my arms around her waist and pulled her closer, moving faster. She loved it. Then her face changed again to one that showed she was really lost in the moment and happy. A few moments later, I gave it my all. I pushed into her hard, even though she was relaxed and lying there like jelly. Watching her face, I could tell what was about to happen. She had that look that meant she thought she was done, but I wasn't ready to stop. I pulled back and pushed in really hard, so hard that the bed broke and fell apart. "Oh," she said. I couldn't tell if she felt pain or joy, but then both my body and my backside reacted all at once. Of the two, I think the fart felt better, but the smell ruined the moment for me. The look on her face was funny. She was still happy from before, but when the smell hit her, her expression changed quickly. "Oh, what's that?" she said. "Eric, you smell awful." Just then, I heard little feet running down the hall, so I quickly grabbed my robe and went to the bathroom. A moment later, my 10-year-old daughter, Erica, peeked around the corner. "Oh my gosh," she shouted with wide eyes. "What happened in here?" With my robe on, I stepped back into the room and looked at the mess. "I'm not sure, Pumpkin," I said, gently rubbing her head. "I was in the bathroom, but it seems like your mom made such a big noise that she broke the bed. Let's get out of here before that smell gets to us." As we turned to leave, I noticed a wicked look on Dana's pretty face. "Eric, you're going to pay for this," she said, showing me her middle finger. "Didn't someone tell you?" I replied. "I already did. It's running down your legs." Even as Erica pulled me from the room, talking about her swim practice with her best friend, Dana dipped her finger into the soup at her feet. She tasted it, and for a moment my heart jumped. I was still thinking about that as my daughter and I walked down the hallway. "Someone needs to fix that bed today," she shouted. It was just another Saturday in the suburbs. We were all busy, and our day had a tight schedule. I took my daughter to swim practice, stopping to pick up her best friend Kylie on the way. The girls would swim together and do some races, followed by a workout in the weight room. While some girls trained with weights, the coaches took each girl out one by one for personal coaching and time trials. When Erica was younger, I would sit in the bleachers and watch her the whole time. I probably would still do it if she hadn't said it made her nervous. She told me, "Daddy, go live your life. Let me live mine." So I dropped her off and headed back home to wash my car. My car is a shiny 2013 Boss 302. I have to admit, I take very good care of it. It hasn't seen rain and probably doesn't even know what snow is. I only drive it in summer, on days when it's unlikely to rain. I have another Mustang for the spring and fall. In winter and on bad weather days, I drive a Jeep. Many people don't know this, but Jeeps actually enjoy rain, snow, and mud. While I washed my car and dropped Erica off, my wife Dana did the shopping for the week. She came home and we put the groceries away together before heading off to our Saturday plans. Sometimes we do things as a family, but most of the time we go our separate ways. That Saturday, as we finished putting away food, Dana made a playful threat. "That bed better get fixed." "Mister," she said, "you should remember to get some lube," I joked. "I don't buy that stuff for your Mustangs," she smirked. "I always pick the wrong kind, remember?" "Not that kind of lube, silly," I said, playfully grabbing her waist. "Someone promised to take care of me, remember?" She smiled widely, and I could tell she was planning something. "Well, nobody's getting taken care of on a broken bed," she said with a laugh. "You take care of the rest." She came over to me, ran her fingers through my hair, and then hurried up the stairs. A few moments later, she returned with her yoga mat and bag. She gave me a quick kiss and shook her head while looking at me. "Yeah, I know," I replied. "The bed is still broken." "No, I was just thinking how lucky we are to have each other," she said. "I love you, Eric." Sure, I smirked. "All the love in the world won't fix your mess. You shouldn't have offered." She put her hands over my mouth to stop me. "Eric, do you really think I would ever say no to anything you want?" she asked. "Okay, if that's true. Then why don't I have a GT 500? I replied. She rolled her eyes at me, put on her big, strange sunglasses, and headed off to her yoga class. That's when I felt myself start to relax. I had around 3 hours to wash my car before the car show began. I had cleaned the inside of the car the night before, so all that was left was to wash the outside. As I soaped a small area and rinsed it, waves of happiness filled me. It wasn't just about the cars, even though I loved them too. I felt truly happy with my life. I had a wife who loved me, and I loved her completely. We had a beautiful daughter who meant the world to me. Our house was almost paid off, and my career was looking bright. Maybe it was my own fault. Perhaps I shouldn't have stood there with cleaning supplies, counting my blessings. Maybe my happy thoughts caught the attention of fate, making it decide to mess with me. On the other hand, it could have just been chance. Maybe it was simply time for a long stretch of good luck to take a turn for the worse. It started in a simple way. I felt a buzz at my waist. I answered my phone to hear a woman crying. "Eric, oh God, I'm so glad you picked up. I can't reach Dana. Ronnie had a heart attack and—" "Slow down, Nancy," I said. "Are you at a hospital?" "We're in the ambulance," she cried. "Nancy, ask the ambulance driver which hospital you're going to," I told her. "CC Cedar Springs in Michigan," she said. "Nancy, a heart attack is serious, but it's not always deadly," I said. "It's bad, but we'll get through this. Stay calm. I'll find Erica and meet you there as soon as I can." While I spoke, I rinsed off all the soap from my Boss 302. I could always clean the car later, but I didn't want soap left on the paint. I jumped into my everyday Mustang and backed out of the driveway. I tried to use the car's system to call Dana, but I knew it wouldn't work. I also realized that this was the same reason Dana's mom had not been able to reach her. The yoga studio Dana went to was very old-fashioned. Students were not allowed to bring their phones inside because they thought phone rings might spoil the peaceful yoga setting. I thought this rule was silly. I often reminded Dana that we had a child and things could come up at any time. "We have a child, Eric," she would say to me. "She has 2 parents, and she always calls you first anyway." I didn't need to explain that you had your own habits, like how you spent a lot of money on many different products to clean your car, but you only spent a few dollars on the cheapest shower gel for yourself. Who does that? The old rule about no phones was just one reason why I disliked the yoga studio. As I parked in front of the small building and saw the sign, all my thoughts came rushing back. The sign had a picture of a big cartoon bear on it. The bear was smiling and bending over in a strange way on a mat. The sign said, "Yoga Bear." At first, I thought they had spelled it wrong, but it was meant to be a funny play on words. That's how they explained it to me when I pointed it out. "Don't you see, honey?" Dana told me. "The bear is naked." "Yeah, the place is traditional. So traditional that everyone there is naked. I told Dana she couldn't go. She went twice as often." "Eric, I'm a 34-year-old woman," she laughed. "I've already had a child. Besides, no one cares about my body." "That's not true, Dana," I said. "You may not be young anymore, but you're still attractive, and you know it. You just want to show off in front of those young guys." "Eric, take me to the club and pick me up," she said. "Just look at those gorgeous young women, and you'll see that most of those guys won't even notice me. Plus, a lot of those guys are gay." So, I agreed. I took her, and it amazed me. There were a few heavier women in the class trying to lose weight, but most of the women there looked like they were ready for a beauty pageant. They were all different, too. Some had long legs and small, perky boobs. Others were thick-legged cheerleader types with larger sizes. And there were even women who looked different in ways I didn't understand. The thin woman with big boobs and a large backside looked kind of strange altogether. Even though I thought Dana was attractive, she did not stand out much among all the beautiful women around us. But I cared about Dana, and I didn't want her showing off to those funny-looking hipster guys with their long beards, odd haircuts, and unusual glasses. They talked about saving the planet and disliked my cars. "Do you know how much harm you're causing to the environment every time you drive that?" one guy asked me. "I'm a proud American," I replied with a smile. "What does that have to do with anything?" he questioned. "The president says all that talk about global warming and the environment is fake," I said. "What about how loud it is?" He kept pushing. "That noise is music to my ears," I answered back with a grin. He just rolled his eyes and rode off on his bicycle. I hoped his beard got caught in the bike and pulled off. I felt annoyed and showed it, but Dana didn't notice. It wasn't like I could really punish her. She's an adult. So instead, I acted like a child. I sulked and stopped talking to her. I even stopped sleeping with her, and that grabbed her attention. For me to back off like that was serious. She began to tease me, showing off her body every chance she got. "The guys in your yoga class get to see a lot more than I do," I joked. "Yeah, but they can't touch," she replied. In the end, she got her way. I only lasted about 3 weeks before she stepped into the shower with me and blew my mind. She pulled me from the shower to our bedroom and made me feel incredible. By the end, I was so worn out I couldn't even spit. "Eric, stop being difficult," she told me. "The only one suffering is you." She was right. Not being intimate was tough. I thought she'd drop yoga just like all her other workout crazes. There had been many. Each one left a memory behind. From aerobics, all she had left were some leg warmers. Tabo only left us with the old videotapes that balanced the garage table. The P90X DVDs? They made great coasters. I figured nudist yoga would last 6 months at most. We were already into the 7th month, and I kept my distance. She had cut her yoga down to twice a week, Saturdays and Wednesdays. She noticed we weren't intimate after her classes. On Wednesdays, she always complained that I didn't rub her back after yoga, but we both knew that if I touched her, it would lead to something more, so I found other things to do. She reluctantly agreed to it. But not having time on Saturday nights, especially after we went out or spent time together as a family, really upset her. We often ended up arguing about it. Erica had to step in a few times. She would knock on our door and ask what we were fighting about. Dana usually said that I was spending too much money on those cars again. "But, Mommy, Daddy loves those cars, and I love my daddy," Erica would always say. This would usually make Dana give in. She would get a strange look on her face, and to be honest, it gave me a weird feeling in my stomach. Having that little girl stand up for me made me feel both excited and nervous at the same time. I always hugged her, and it made me feel closer to her in those moments. It felt like there was no way I could love her more. My heart felt like it would burst from the love I had for my daughter. I really loved Dana, but I would do anything for Erica. I always carried her back to bed, even though she was 10 and probably too old for that. When I returned to our room, the arguments were usually still going on. We would whisper to keep Erica from hearing us. "Why do you have to be so stubborn about this?" Dana whispered. "I put up with your running. I put up with your craziness over Mustangs." "Dana, this is different," I whispered back, getting a little angry. "When I run, I wear clothes and I go alone. After I'm done, I come right back home." "And plop your sweaty self down on my furniture," she hissed. We paused before we continued because her voice was getting loud enough for Erica to hear. "And about my cars," I continued. "I always ask you before I buy a car or make a big purchase. Even though it's my money, I ask because we're married, so everything is ours." She nodded. "But if everything is ours, why do you get that frown on your face every time I ask you to drive one of our cars?" she asked. "Because you have your own car," I replied. "And?" she pressed. "And your car is all banged up," I said, feeling a bit shy. "So you think you have to protect our cars from me?" She smiled. "Yoga is just my way of taking care of my body. Yoga helps me stay fit so you don't have a wife who isn't in shape. Eric, I can't run or lift weights, but I can do yoga." "Why can't you do yoga with your clothes on?" I asked. "It's not about being naked," she complained. "I just like this place and the people in it. But when you turn me down, it makes me feel like I'm not good enough." We always agreed to think about it, but we never really settled the argument. "Hey, Eric," said the receptionist at the yoga studio. She would always look dreamy when I talked to her. She was a pretty 20-year-old girl from India. "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that." "What yoga pose is that?" They hurried to get away from each other, but in the chaos, the teacher pushed too hard on Dana's stretched leg. She cried out and fell hard to the floor, rolling in pain. He looked at me and the shocked faces of the yoga students standing in the doorway. Even through her pain, Dana tried to cover up what happened. "Eric, honey," she moaned. "It's not what you think." "What is it then?" I replied angrily. "Because what I think is that you were with this guy. That looked more like something else than yoga." "Eric, I know this looks bad, but you didn't see what you think you saw," said the teacher, a balding Indian man I had met a few times before. "Oh, great, he's quoting Will Smith," I said. He looked confused. I walked closer to him, and then he realized I was angry. He jumped back into a stance that looked like karate. It looked silly with his legs bent and his fists ready. He straightened up quickly, hands dropping to protect himself. That's when I hit him in the mouth as hard as I could. When my fist hit his face, he leaned back, and then his whole body followed. The teacher fell hard and spit out a couple of teeth. My hand hurt so much I never wanted to hit anything again. I pulled my foot back and kicked him hard between the legs. He slid almost a foot across the wooden floor. The yoga students watching winced at his loud scream. As I turned to leave, I stopped and looked back at Dana, who was moaning on the floor, holding her leg. "Eric, I'm sorry," she whined. "My leg hurts really bad. I think I need to go to the hospital." "Good," I replied coldly. "That's where I was going. While you were in here with that fake, your dad had a heart attack." Her face went white with shock. I started walking toward the door again. "Eric, wait," she called. "Are you still going to the hospital? I can't drive like this. I can't even move my leg." I turned back to her again. "Dana, remember when I first got my new Mustang? You were worried I'd use it to meet other women like I was having some midlife crisis. You made me promise not to. What was that promise?" I scratched my head like I was trying to remember. "Oh yeah," I said. "You made me promise that no bad people would ever get in my car, and with everything going on, I can't give you a ride." When I finally left the room, I saw that it had only been 5 minutes. In just 300 seconds, I went from being a happily married man to a sad man facing divorce. I was so lost in my sadness that I didn't see Jesus and another guy standing in my way. "I called the police," he said with pride. "You can't leave." "Yeah," said the other guy behind him. He had tattoos and wore glasses. "Look, Jesus," I said, "I know you care about that guy over there, and I get that you want to do good for the earth and people." He smiled, thinking I was complimenting him. "But if you don't move your bearded, pot-smelling, vegetarian self out of my way, I'm going to kick you so hard that you won't be able to ride your bike home." "That's how you simple folks handle problems," said the tattooed guy. "You always want to fight." I quickly took his glasses off his face and set them on the floor. His scream was louder than the guru's yelling. He dropped to his knees to look for his glasses. Jesus wisely stepped aside. Sadly, there was a sickening crunch as the other guy's foot hit what he thought was the ground. "Please tell me you didn't step on my glasses," yelled his furious friend, who was nearly blind. "Sorry," said Jesus, looking serious. "You're going to be sorry," said the other guy angrily. I couldn't help but feel disgusted as I watched 2 bare, bearded men struggle on the floor. As I passed through the reception area, the peacefulness of the studio was broken. Indira was trying to calm angry customers who all wanted their money back. It took me 10 minutes to reach the hospital and 5 more to find my mother-in-law. She looked like she had been barely holding on. It seemed she was just strong enough until someone else could help her. As soon as I hugged her, she broke down and started to cry. "They had to put a stent in one of his arteries," she sobbed. "That's it. He is now officially a vegetarian. No more fried food for him, no more barbecue and beer, no meat, no chips, no sauces, no dips. None of that junk food." I squeezed her and nodded. "You should wait until he feels better to tell him that," I smiled. "Why?" she asked. "It's not like he gets a choice in it." "I'm making a stand," I said firmly. "But when he finds out he can't have any of his favorite things, he'll wish he hadn't done this," she replied. "Where's Dana?" she asked. "She was at yoga," I answered honestly. "I told her what happened, then I came to be with you." I'm sure she is either here already or on her way. You're a good son-in-law, Eric, she said, pulling me in for a hug. About half an hour later, the surgeon came in to speak with us. She said that everything was okay. My father-in-law would recover fully, and with a healthy diet and light exercises, he could live a long, happy life. She recommended that he not go back to work for 3 weeks to a month, longer if his job was physical. At this point, my mother-in-law began asking her many questions, and the doctor seemed upset. She took off her surgical cap and mask, and I recognized her. She was a kind, older Indian woman I had seen a few times before, but I couldn't remember where. After the surgeon left, my mother-in-law and I went up to the room. We had been there about 10 minutes when they brought Dana in a wheelchair. "How's Dad?" she asked. "What happened to you?" her mother said with concern. Dana looked at me for help before she answered. "I pulled some muscles in my thigh at yoga," she said. "How's Dad?" Her mother filled Dana in on her father's condition, but Dana kept looking at me. I was trying hard to think of a way to escape. "So, how was the car show?" Dana asked me, a little unsure. "I didn't get to go," I said. "Your mom called, and some things are just more important." "Yep, you always put family first," Dana replied. "You can forgive the people you love for anything. Sometimes things happen, and we have to stick together. If we forgive each other, everything will be great." "Dana, what are you talking about?" her mother said. "Eric knows your father didn't have a heart attack to stop him from going to a car show. No one needs to forgive anyone. You're not making any sense." Dana looked confused, trying to find a way to explain herself. That's when I saw my chance to leave. "Dana, with your leg hurting from yoga, you can't pick Erica up from the mall." "I should go do that," I said. "Why don't you two come back here later?" she suggested. "It might be better for you to go home with your mom," I replied. "She shouldn't be alone right now. I'll call you later." I hugged her mom again and left quickly. I drove to the mall and sat in the parking lot. I had no idea when Erica and her friend would be done shopping. I texted her to let me know when she was ready. While I waited in my car, I looked up divorce lawyers on my phone. That's when the pain of what had happened hit me hard. Up until that moment, I had been just trying to keep going, so I didn't really feel much. But now, with nothing else to focus on, the pain set in. In a way, my father-in-law and I were alike. Not in how we looked, but in what we were going through. We both started the day feeling like happy family men. But then, at nearly the same time, our lives changed in a big way. He had real heart problems. Mine were more about feelings. He needed to change his way of living to stay healthy. I needed to change my life, too. He would have to eat better and move more. I would have to make some tough choices as well. For both of us, that day marked the end of a simpler time. He would wake up realizing he couldn't just eat and drink whatever he wanted anymore. I had just found out that the woman I loved had been unfaithful. My father-in-law might choose to stop eating unhealthy foods forever. I had to figure out if I could ever look at Dana again. Just thinking about her made it hard. Remembering her smile as another man was with her made me doubt I could be close to her again. Honestly, when I thought about Dana, she didn't seem like the woman I loved anymore. She felt more like a problem I needed to solve. I thought about how to deal with her in a way that would cause me the least pain. I felt empty inside. It was as if my heart was no longer there. As I looked at my phone, I saw so many lawyers listed. How could I ever choose one? The idea of meeting 5 or 6 lawyers made me feel sick. Then it hit me. There were so many divorce lawyers because there were so many divorces. I wasn't special. I was just another number. The world wouldn't stop for my marriage ending. In fact, the world wouldn't even slow down. No one would notice my divorce. I'd just become another unhappy divorced guy. There were millions of us. One more wouldn't matter. Just then, my phone rang. I answered, thinking it might be Erica. "Eric, honey, I'm so sorry," Dana said, her voice shaky. "Please forgive me. I don't know how this happened, but I promise it will never happen again." I didn't say anything. The silence was loud. I could hear her breathing. I could almost feel her heart beating. "Dana, was this the first time?" I asked. "Yeah." "No," she cried. "This wasn't the first time with him, right?" I asked. She let out a deep sigh, and I knew the answer. "Sweetheart, it doesn't mean anything," she said. "It was just a moment. It was a way to try something different and pass the time." "I don't agree, Dana," I said. It means our marriage is falling apart. It means we might not be together much longer. Dana, my heart was racing so fast I thought my mom could hear it. I felt a sharp pain inside me. I've never been hit in the stomach, but I could imagine how that felt. I could hardly breathe and thought I might be sick. "What's wrong?" my mom asked. I didn't want her to know what was happening. I didn't understand it myself. "Nothing, Mom," I said. "Eric and I were just talking about how glad we are that Dad is okay." A couple of hours later, I tried to call him again. No answer on his phone or the house phone. Feeling worried, I called my daughter Erica. "What?" she said when she picked up the phone. "That's not how to answer the phone, young lady," I said. "Oh, hi, Mommy," she replied. "I'm tired from swimming and walking around the mall." "Where is your dad?" I asked. "He's outside washing his car and talking to himself," she said. Even at 10 years old, I could tell she was worried. "I don't think he feels well." "Can you ask him to come to the phone?" I asked. "Mom, you know how he gets when he washes his cars. I'll tell him to call you when he finishes. Bye?" And she hung up. I felt so angry that I wanted to go home and yell at her. Eric had spoiled her so much that she did whatever she wanted without thinking about the consequences. I sat by the phone, waiting and hoping it would ring. My sore leg was starting to hurt more. I took my pain medicine and quickly fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, the house was quiet. My leg was killing me. I knew where I was and why. The medicine must have knocked me out longer than I thought because the sun was up and it felt like it was afternoon. Suddenly, I felt a chill. I had no idea where my mom was or where Eric had gone. I figured Eric had probably skipped his morning run and would find a way to blame me. I called his number, but it went straight to voicemail. That scared me because I knew Eric had a way to trick his phone. Normally, his phone rang a few times before going to voicemail, giving him a chance to pick it up if he was busy. If a call went straight to voicemail, it meant he had blocked my number. I could leave messages, but they would be deleted right away and Eric would never know I called. I decided to call my daughter again. Her phone rang for a long time before she finally picked it up. I could tell she was upset. "Yes, Mother," she said in a cold voice that felt icy. "Erica, where are you?" I asked. "Dad took me and Sarah from the swim team, plus her sister, to the movies while he went for a run. Then he's going to the hospital to see Grandpa. Did you know Grandpa had a heart attack? Anyway, when the movie I'm missing is done, Sarah's mom will drive us home. Dad will pick me up from Sarah's house. Bye, Mom." Right then, I knew that once this was all over, Erica and I needed to talk. I understood what it meant to be a daddy's girl. I used to be one too. But Eric had spoiled Erica too much. She only seemed to listen to him. Since he always gave in to her, it felt like a 10-year-old was running our house. This morning was a clear example of that. Eric quickly found something for Erica to do so he could run errands, but neither of them thought about me. After thinking about it, I felt calmer. My daughter was 10 years old. I couldn't expect her to be as caring as an adult. At that age, kids often think the world is all about them, especially when they're spoiled like her. And Eric? I didn't even know how to explain what had happened between us. It would take a lot of time and pretending to be nice to fix things, but I was sure it could be fixed. I took another pain pill and fell back asleep. For the next few days, this became my routine. I mostly stayed in bed to help my leg heal. I did call my dad and talk to him on the phone. It was a lonely time, and I started to think my mom was mad at me. I needed to understand why, so I asked her. "You haven't come to the hospital even once," she snapped. "Eric is there every day. He even brought Erica a couple of times. He's your dad's son-in-law, but he isn't your dad's child." "Mom, the doctor said if I put more stress on my hip, I might need surgery," I told her. "I promise I'll make it up to Dad, but he might be better before I am." In my frustration, I called my best friend Peggy and told her everything without holding back. I wanted her to talk to Eric for me. "I think you are taking this way too seriously," she said. "You really should think about leaving him. Remember why you married him in the first place. It's not like you're in love with him. If I were you, I'd divorce him. Then you could relax and do what you want, and he would have to support you." "You're not helping," I replied. "Eric makes more money than I do, but not enough for me to get a lot for support if we split." "The first thing you should do is quit your job," she said. "Why work when he can handle it?" I stared at her in disbelief. Why would he agree to that? I laughed. You're not thinking straight, girl, she replied. You married him because you got pregnant your last month of college. You've been in this game too long. You're starting to believe that your life in the suburbs is real. You plan to leave him in a few years when your kid could take care of herself, right? And another thing, you're lucky because you can get him to help with child support, too. He cares about that kid and will pay as much as he can. Whenever you need something for her, I bet he'll work extra just to get it. You can just lie about what she needs whenever you want something for yourself. He wouldn't even know. Guys are so clueless. Your daughter is 10, and he still doesn't realize she isn't really his. What a fool! She was still laughing when I heard the door slam downstairs. Peggy, be quiet, I said. My mom's home. She doesn't need to hear your crazy ideas. Why are my ideas crazy? She asked. Think about it. If you do things my way, you can go out and meet whoever you want, anytime you want. And you'll have a guy to help with your kid, too. What do you have to lose? Everything, I replied, feeling upset. I made a really bad choice with my yoga teacher. In the studio, he seemed so important and full of secrets. Everyone acted like he was special. And then there was the fact that, well, I've never been with a guy from another country, and what about all those guys from college? She laughed. They're just as American as we are. They might as well be white guys from different places. But more importantly, the only guy I want is my own, and I already get that whenever I want. All I have to do is give Eric a look, and he knows what I want. And you know what? Eric has been looking after my daughter since before she was born. He would do anything to protect her. I don't need anyone else. But what about the mystery of the yoga guy? She teased. As soon as Eric walked into that room, I knew I had made a mistake, I told her. When he punched that guy, I realized there was no mystery. He was just a sleazy old man who tricked me into being with him, and I paused. And what? She laughed. It's not funny, Peggy, I said. Eric loves me. I mean, I'm everything to him. I hurt him a lot. I was wrong. I need to tell you something. Don't say that, silly, she whispered. If you think this is bad, he would never talk to you again if he knew how many times you've been with someone else. I meant, I wanted to tell you, Peggy, I said. You? She laughed. I already know all your secrets. No, you don't, I told her. The truth is, I love Eric too. Over the last 10 years, things have changed for me. I've grown up. It just took me a while to see it. Eric is everything I want in a man. And before all this happened, I hadn't been with anyone else in more than 5 years. Are you serious? She chuckled. I mean, he's cute, but he's so ordinary. He's like a dad. He is my daughter's dad, and we both love him, Peggy, I said. I can get guys like him anytime I want, she said. No, Peg, I laughed. You borrow them. They get what they want and don't give you anything special. Has even one of those guys ever held you close after being together? Nope, they just hurry back to their real lives and tell their friends about you. If your car breaks down or you get sick, does anyone really care? When you're feeling down, you can probably get a lot of guys to be with you, but who will just hold you? Who remembers your birthday? Who goes out to get you things when you need them? Who truly cares about you, Peggy? For a while, we didn't say anything. Peggy, we can't fit into our old cheerleading outfits anymore, I said. Things have changed. Eric still thinks I'm beautiful. He gets jealous if other guys look at me. That man will love me forever, and I just hurt him for something silly. I feel so foolish. Okay, we need a new plan, she said. We have to find a way to win him back. Just then the door slammed and my mom yelled upstairs that she was home. I see Eric came over, she said. What? I asked. He told me he was bringing you some clothes, she said. He left them on the sofa downstairs. Or didn't you two get to talk about the clothes? Mom, I would never be rude in your house, I said. Dana, if you want to give me another grandchild, I'd be happy, she said. Erica is already 10 years old. I think it's time. You don't want to wait until it's too late. Peggy laughed, but suddenly I felt a warm feeling inside. I knew what I wanted more than anything. I wanted to give Eric the child he deserved. But first, I needed to win him back. Peggy and I came up with plan after plan, but none of them worked. I got texts from him asking how my leg was healing or saying he had to go away for work. The messages always came through my mom or from Erica. Speaking of Erica, I wasn't sure how much Eric had told her about our situation, but things were really tense between us. I later found out that my daughter believed I had left her because I hadn't come home. I couldn't tell her that I couldn't return home or that I was staying away to keep her father from leaving us. Peggy and I had figured out that if I went back home, Eric would leave and everyone would find out about our troubles. "I know how to get him back," Peggy said with excitement about 2 weeks after Eric's trip. I sat up so fast that it hurt my leg. "How?" I shouted. "File for a divorce," she said, and I was shocked. "Are you crazy?" I asked. "It's smart," she replied. "It probably won't go far. He loves you. He's just mad. If he thinks he might lose you for good and lose our daughter, he'll beg you to drop the divorce. And if it goes further than we think, you'll have to meet with your lawyers. Then you can ask for a private meeting with him. If he refuses the meeting, then you get your lawyer to say you both need counseling," she added. "How do you know so much about divorces?" I asked. "I've been through 4 of them," she said with a smirk. "You're lying." "You've never been married," I laughed. "I didn't say I was," she replied. "But I've been with a lot of married men, and I caused 4 or 5 divorces. This is how it goes. Usually the guys lose in a divorce." So I decided to follow her advice. I got a lawyer that Peggy knew who had just finished law school to file the papers and represent me. We told him that things wouldn't go far. We thought it would never go to court. But of course, everything went wrong. I don't understand how it got so messed up. I don't know why I listened to a woman who has never been married or loved anyone but herself, but I did. It all fell apart like a barrel of trouble rolling down a hill. Eric was served at work. From the start, I had a bad feeling about it. We hired a blonde process server who was supposed to be tough. My lawyer was there to videotape it for me. She walked up to Eric and asked who he was. He smiled and told her his name. Then she told him he was served. I saw a tear roll down his cheek. I think that touched her. It definitely affected me. He wiped his tear and took the envelope from her. He thanked her but shook his head with sadness. She seemed interested. "She cheated on me, but she's asking for a divorce," he said. She hugged him and I got angry. She was supposed to be tough. She even gave him her business card and told him to call her once he felt better. I wanted to strangle her. My lawyer asked for a meeting, but Eric's lawyer refused. He wanted to skip to a judge or go to arbitration. My lawyer said that Eric needed to go to counseling. Eric said no. My lawyer believed that Eric had made a big mistake. The court agreed and said that Eric had to go to counseling sessions. Eric still refused, so the judge called a quick meeting to discuss the situation. Peggy and I were excited. My lawyer told me that the judge would make Eric go to counseling and then we could talk things over. I felt like I was winning. I imagined being back in my own bed in about a week. I knew it would take some time, but eventually Eric and I would be working together for our baby. I almost went somewhere, but it wasn't home. I almost went to jail. I dressed up to show Eric what he was missing. I got my hair and makeup done. I wore a dress that Eric loved, which fit me well. When Eric came in, he looked terrible. I thought he had slept in his clothes and had been sad about me for weeks. I felt like I was winning, but I realized I had been tricked from the start. My lawyer stood up to speak. He seemed nervous at first, but grew more confident as he talked. The judge was nodding, as if he had heard everything my lawyer said many times before. My lawyer listed what I wanted, starting with counseling and a meeting with Eric. He mentioned how Eric had refused to talk to me and how I had firmly said no to the divorce. But if the divorce did happen, I had some simple needs like fair alimony, child support, and the house. That's when things got tense. Eric's lawyer raised his hand like a child in school. The judge stopped my lawyer, and Eric's lawyer asked to speak privately. The judge agreed, and I started to feel nervous. He looked unhappy as he glanced at me and my lawyer. He called us into his office. We sat around a large table waiting for the judge to come in. "Hi, Eric," I said. He acted like he didn't hear me. Before I could say more, the judge walked in, and he looked very angry. He had a big police officer with him who stood by the door. "What are you trying to do, Mr. McCaffrey?" the judge shouted at my lawyer. "Why are you pretending to be a lawyer in my courtroom?" I was shocked. "Your Honor, I am a lawyer," my lawyer said nervously. "I graduated from law school, but I didn't do very well." "But you haven't even taken the bar exam," the judge yelled. "You shouldn't use the word court or try to practice law. You've committed fraud. The bailiff will take you to jail." You need to find a real lawyer. And you, miss, the judge began to say, but then Eric's lawyer interrupted. He told the judge that because this was a strange situation and we weren't really in court where recordings couldn't be used, he wanted to play a tape for him. Go ahead, said the judge. Eric's lawyer played a recording I never knew existed. As I listened, it all made sense. I had ruined my own life. It wasn't my mother who had slammed the door that day. Eric had indeed brought me clothes, and he had heard everything. He knew it all. When the tape finished, I looked at him across the table. I looked into his eyes and saw nothing. The love and fun that should have been there had vanished. Eric, I stammered. You don't know the whole... What else is there to know? He asked. You didn't marry me because you loved me. You married me so I could take care of another man's child. And you've been unfaithful the entire time. If I hadn't found out, you would have left me as soon as Erica could look after herself. Eric, you didn't... Well, okay, that was true at first, but over time, I realized how bad it looked. Well, you got me, Dana, he said. I fell for it. I loved you like there was no tomorrow. I loved our life. I had no idea it was all a lie. Whether he knew it or not, he was breaking my heart. I knew there was nothing I could do to change his mind about me, that my feelings had changed. This is one of the worst things I have ever heard, said the judge. Young man, I can't give you back the time you've lost, but I can give you your freedom. Your divorce is granted. No alimony. And for the first time, I'm going to give the guilty party a choice. Young lady, what sounds better to you, going to jail for fraud or giving up your claim on the family home? He asked. He can have the house, I said. The judge nodded. Eric, I know you probably don't care, but it will be really tough telling Erica that we are getting a divorce. I'm going to need some time to explain things to her. Don't, he said. What do you mean? I asked. Do you know who her father is? He asked. Is he a terrible person and that's why you chose me? Eric, I was just a kid away from home for the first time, I said. I went wild. I couldn't remember many of the guys I was with. I picked you because you were really nice and you were, the only one who didn't leave when I told them. How do you know she isn't mine? He asked. DNA test 2 years ago when she was in 4th grade, I said. I cried for hours. Then I decided not to tell either one of you. She doesn't know, Eric. She loves you. You're the only dad she's ever had. I need time to tell her. Don't, he said again. One of us being heartbroken is enough. I'll pay child support and we can share custody. We'll take turns every week. But why would you? I started to ask. I love her too, he said. She's all I have left. I want her to have the best childhood possible. We'll tell her the truth when she's older. How about the divorce? I asked. Couldn't we? He just shook his head. There are many kids with divorced parents, he said. She'll handle it better than... The judge looked at me as if I had just shown up from a dirty place. If I ever see you in my court again, for any reason, even if you're the one bringing the case, you will go to jail for a long time, he said with a grumble. I wasn't sure if he was speaking to me or just thinking aloud, but as I walked out of the courtroom, all I could think about was making a plan to win my husband back. Even after hurting him, Eric's love and kindness were clear. His choice to stay in my daughter's life and pay child support for a child that wasn't his meant a lot. I knew him better than anyone. I understood that he didn't want to talk to me right now, so I decided to give him time and space before I tried to reach out again. It was a plan, Peggy whispered as I left the court. What are you talking about? I asked. I spoke to Mitch in his cell, she said. He thinks it was a setup. Eric and his lawyer planned all of this. Think about it. Why didn't he file for the divorce? He had all the proof he needed to go after you. Why wait? Because deep down he still loves me and wasn't sure about the divorce, I replied. No, honey, she said. He still loves your daughter. She's named after him. He helped bring her into the world. That girl could do anything, and he would still care for her. He waited for you to file so you would have to pay the court fees. Plus, about that tape of his, you heard the lawyer. In an ordinary divorce case, they could never have used it. So he avoided every meeting until the court got mad and called him in for a hearing where a judge could listen to the tape. Mitch may have just finished school, but Eric's lawyer really knew what they were doing. I've never seen a divorce case like this. He got everything he wanted. He got the house, doesn't have to give you any money, and he gets to see your daughter half of the time, and she's not even his. Wow. I thought you didn't like being taken advantage of. I don't, I said sharply. I can't tell, she grinned. It looks like you just got taken advantage of by a bunch of people. Mitch didn't help much as a lawyer. Eric's lawyer really took charge. The judge went against you, and at the end of the day, even Eric outsmarted you. Can you name one thing? Just one little thing you got out of this? Eric is paying me child support, I replied. She shook her head. No, he's not, she said. You share custody. When you have your daughter, he pays you. The next week, he has her and you pay him. It all balances out. They all just hurt you. You hurt me too, Peggy, I said. This was your idea. Things got worse in the next few weeks. I had to tell my parents that Eric and I were getting a divorce. Eric wanted me to do two things. First, he wanted me to tell them the real reason we were splitting up. Second, he told me I couldn't say that Erica wasn't his child. He was worried that one of them would accidentally say something and it would upset her. My dad looked at me with disappointment, but he hugged me and said I should learn from this and do better next time. My mom slapped me and started crying. What next time? She shouted. Dana, you're 35. Men your age want younger women. The older men just want a short fling. If they are good men, they're already married. If they're not married, they're either divorced and have issues, or they aren't the kind of man women want to marry. Most are too old to have kids or don't want them. You... She just stared at me with her mouth open like she was in shock. What, Mom? I asked. Eric, she said. What about him? I asked. Is he okay? Dana. He must have been heartbroken knowing what you did to him. For all the time you were together, he always told everyone how beautiful you were and how lucky he was to have you, she said. Everyone was tired of hearing it. I never got tired of it, I said. Dana, wake up for once, she hissed. He must have felt crushed by what happened. But he came to the hospital to see your dad every day. He sat with us, acting like everything was okay. He brought Erica to see her grandfather. He drove your dad home, and all the while he never... My mom started crying then, and even my dad looked upset with me. Dana, he went through all that alone, she cried. It must have been hard. He was so nice to us, and Erica was so happy. I don't think even she knew how much he was hurting. He never said anything bad about you. He kept making excuses for why you weren't there, while you were at home pretending your leg hurt because you were scared we would find out. My leg was hurt, I said. It was a real injury. I could tell neither of them believed me. I realized then that not only had I hurt my marriage, but I had also damaged my relationship with my parents. I was staying with them until I found a new apartment, and things were not getting better. In fact, they got worse the very next day. I had just come home from work when my mother handed me the phone. She gave it to me like it was something dirty. Dana, I really need your help, he said. My heart sank when I heard his voice. I recognized him right away. What do you want? I snapped. Haven't you caused enough trouble already? I need you to tell your husband to stop, he said. He's ruining my life. Welcome to the club, I replied. I'm already divorced, and my parents can hardly look at me. My daughter thinks I've left her behind, and my husband won't even talk to me. I wish I could just say I'm sorry, but I never got the chance. Look, what happened between us was just one more problem for me, but I can't help you. Out of curiosity, what's he doing? My yoga studio is closed now, he whined. The day your husband found us, all my students left. They told everyone. Somehow it got on Facebook, and soon everyone knew. My instructor started to think badly of me. You need a license to teach yoga. I lost mine because of the complaints. On top of that, your husband is suing me for ruining your marriage. I laughed. It actually made me feel a bit better that Eric thought losing me was worth suing someone. From what I've heard, lawsuits like that usually don't pay off, I said. Your husband is a jerk, he said. It's not about the money. He's only suing me for $25. But getting served at home means my wife found out, and now our marriage is in trouble. Every time the case comes up, I have more problems. When it was in the newspapers and on social media, it showed my name and said I'm the husband of a well-known heart doctor. This is hurting her reputation and making her lose patience because no one wants a doctor with personal drama. My wife's lawyers have offered him a lot of money to drop the case, but he won't even meet with them. He sounds so hurt and just wants to make everyone else hurt too. It's like he's lost everything and wants to drag others down with him. Suddenly, I felt worse. I didn't feel sorry for him, though. He was an adult and should deal with the choices we made. But I felt bad for his wife. She didn't deserve to have her job and name damaged because her husband couldn't control himself. Their kids also didn't deserve to have their lives turned upside down, and her patients needed a good doctor. From what I knew, she was a great one. "I'm not making any promises," I said, "but I will make a phone call." "Are you calling your husband?" he asked, sounding relieved even through the phone. "Nope," I replied. "He doesn't take my calls, but I'm calling someone he listens to." A moment later, I dialed the number, and it was picked up. "What now, Mom?" she said. "Daddy is taking me and my friends to Cold Stone." Erica had to admit she was really pretty for someone older. Her skin was a nice coffee color, which a lot of women from India have. Her dark brown eyes sparkled with smartness and energy, but there was also a hint of sadness in them. "French fries aren't good for your heart," she said to start our talk. "I run a lot so I can eat them," I replied. "What's your best 5K time?" she asked. 17 minutes and 30 seconds, I said proudly. "Wow, you're fast," she exclaimed. "Even back in college, I could never run that quickly." It was funny to hear her use such casual language with her lovely Indian accent. Despite the tough times we were facing, her smile showed what a good person she was. I liked her right away. Because I liked her, I felt bad about how I had acted before. I should have thought through my actions more carefully. At that moment, I realized I was hurting not just the guilty people, but also the victims. This woman was not to blame for what our spouses did, just like I wasn't. But I was putting her through more suffering with my anger. "How can I help you, doctor?" I asked, and I really meant it. "By letting me help you," she said. "I know you're hurting. I am, too. I'll drop the lawsuit, the newspaper reports, everything. I promised." "What do you want in return?" she asked with a smile. "I've already offered your lawyers $500,000. I can't give more than that." We both knew she could. We also knew that once everything settled down, she would make a lot more money, but again, she wasn't at fault. "How's your divorce going?" I asked. "We have 6 kids," she said with a smile. "We also have a traditional marriage." "We won't get divorced. Why do you ask?" I smiled back at her. There was a strong connection between us, and I was sure she felt it too. Her next words showed that. "If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, it has to be a secret," she said. "If you're thinking what I'm thinking, I'd want your husband to see it," I replied, her face twisted from a smirk to shock. "In some cultures, that would be a huge insult," she said. "It would also mean we're no better than them," I said. "It's a pity that we are better people than the ones we married." "How much money does your husband have?" I asked. "I don't want anything from you. I just want to hurt him." "Maybe $150,000 left from the dowry my parents gave him, and a bit from the lease of the yoga studio that has closed down. He thinks he can make some money by renting it out again. I have told him he can't leave the house anymore. He is now a stay-at-home dad. His job is to take care of the kids and our home." "That's what I want," I said. $150,000 and the yoga studio." "But I offered you more than 3 times that," she laughed. "You're not being clear." "I did this to hurt him," I said. "I never wanted to hurt you. This way I can take away a big part of his pride without costing you anything. But you have to promise me you won't give him any of his money back." "Oh, I've wanted to hurt him a bit too," she said. "But I won't give him a single dime from our home money. That's how I ended up with a broken yoga studio. Since I had a good job and not much debt, the money felt like a gift. I bought one thing I had always wanted and saved the rest for my daughter Erica's college fund. The one thing I bought for myself was a 2003 SVT Cobra convertible. I had dreamed of owning one for a long time. Now there were just 2 cars left on my wish list, a 1967 Fastback and a 2014 Shelby GT 500. I got the Cobra for $27,000 and put the rest away for Erica's college. My in-laws didn't understand why I wanted the car, but they were glad it made me happy. They loved that I was saving for my daughter's future, even though I could feel some sadness from my mother-in-law. I asked her about it later. It's just hard knowing I will only have one grandchild, she said sadly. Is there really no chance of... I hugged her and shook my head. She never loved me, I said with a sigh. If we hadn't had Erica, she wouldn't have married me. I was too boring for her. Eric, you need to talk to her, she said. Her feelings changed over the years. She did love you at the end, and she's unhappy without you. I think she just got used to me, I said. I was like an old pair of shoes. That's not how I want to be loved, but she'll find someone else. And maybe you can still have more grandkids. Over the next few weeks, I focused on two things: my work and making sure Erica adjusted to our new life as easily as possible. The news that she wasn't my biological child didn't change how I felt. I thought that was just another result of Dana's mistakes, not about Erica or me. Erica had been my little girl from the day she was born. Since she was born while her mother and I were married, in the eyes of the law, she was my child. She would always be my little girl until she turned 18 and could choose for herself. The first week went well. Erica and I did mostly what she wanted. I dropped her off at school a bit earlier so I could get to my job on time. We signed her up for a couple of after-school activities so I could pick her up after work. When we got home, we cooked dinner together, and then she did her homework while I worked on my cars or exercised. We ended the night by talking or watching TV together. Neither of us talked about the big issue hanging over us. I think we both felt it was still too new and too hard to deal with. It was supposed to be Dana's turn to have Erica in the second week, but she hadn't found a place to stay yet. I didn't mind having Erica back, and the third week was mine anyway. But before the fourth week, Erica started saying bad things about her mom. I felt like this wasn't good for her, so I decided to step in. I went to visit her grandparents with a plan in my head. "Hey, Mrs.," I started, but I could see that she looked hurt. "Eric, you have only called me Nancy or Mom for the past 10 years. Why the change?" she asked. "I'm not your son-in-law anymore," I said, shrugging. "Says who?" she replied. "What's your plan?" "Erica is beginning to feel upset about Dana not being around," I explained. "I know she hasn't found a place yet, and I think she doesn't want to have Erica here right now. So, I'd like her to use the house next week so she can have her turn." She hugged me and said, "That's a wonderful idea, honey. Where will you stay?" "I'll get a room at a motel near work for a week," I replied. "Oh, no," she said. "You can stay in the guest room upstairs. Those motels are not safe." So I stayed with my in-laws for a week. On Saturday night, I took them out to eat to thank them. On Sunday morning, I went back to the house. I planned for Erica to go to a carnival with her friends. Her friend's mom would drive them and stay with them until I arrived after my run and shower. I would bring them back for dinner, and their parents would pick them up from our house later. I figured the girls would want to leave the carnival early. They were just 10 and 11. They would ride some rides, play games, and then get bored and want to do something else. I knew my daughter wanted to show off our pool, so I was surprised when I got home early that morning from my run. The house was a mess. My 10-year-old daughter was trying to clean it. She looked at me and shook her head. I helped her out, and we made the house look decent. I put Erica's favorite outfit in the wash. Thank goodness for quick wash settings. I was just taking her clothes out of the dryer when Pam's mom called to say she was on her way. "I missed you so much, Daddy," Erica said as she hugged me goodbye. I went to my room to change into my running clothes. My room was a sight to see. There were crumpled papers everywhere, and Dana was sleeping on my bed with a pillow. There was an open bottle of liquor on the bedside table. When I opened the drawer, she stirred in her sleep. I quickly grabbed some shorts and a shirt. I picked up my running shoes and left the room. I changed in the kitchen and drove to the park. Just as I got there, my phone rang. It was her. "Hi, Dana," I said. "Erica is gone," she replied. I explained everything to her, trying to stay calm and not show any feelings. "Oh," she said. "You're really good at this single-parent thing. I need to get my act together." "It's easy for me," I said. She loves you more," she yelled. "I get it. I'm the one who broke up her family. Did you ever think that maybe it's easier for you because you got the house?" For a moment, we didn't say anything. Then I heard her crying. "That's not what I meant to say," I told her. "I wanted to say that it's easy for me because she's all I have. You have a big family, Dana. I grew up alone. My parents died before I ever met you. I worry about Erica because she's the only one I care about." I could hear her gasp from the other side of the phone. "I'm sorry, Eric," she said, her voice low. "I'm just not coping well." I could have found a place by now, but I don't want a small apartment or a rented house. I want my house that I chose and you paid for. But that's not even right. When I first arrived, I walked around and looked at everything. Besides some of my things, nothing had changed, but it felt empty. The house means nothing without you there. I want my house back. I want my family back. I want my husband back. Do you know what I saw last week? I saw that guy who caused all of this. He was out with his wife and their kids in the park. He tried to hold her hand, but she pulled away. At least they are working on things. They're family. Their marriage is still together. Why isn't mine? It's not fair. Dana, I don't have all the answers, I said. I have to go now to pick up Erica from the carnival. Okay, Eric, she said. Do you think someday we could talk about... Someday, I replied. But not right now. It's still too soon. I can't handle those feelings yet. Bye, Dana. Everything I told her was true, but it didn't cover everything else. I was struggling with our situation, too. I felt a new kind of anger that I had never felt before. I was angry at Dana for what she did to me. We had been married for 10 long years, and it had all been a lie. I had heard the saying, "Nice guys finish last," but she had changed it for me. She had tricked me for years. She looked me in the eye every day and lied. I had no idea how many times she had betrayed me. I was so angry that I felt like I couldn't control it. And that anger was not just for Dana. Besides my daughter and my mother-in-law, I found it hard to trust women at all. Sure, I could act polite to them at work. I was able to chat a bit with Erica's teachers and her friends' moms, but I didn't really trust them at all. I knew my feelings weren't great. I talked to a counselor, and he said that with everything I'd gone through, how I felt was normal. He suggested I read some stories about divorce online. I liked the ones by Just Plain Bob and Barney R., but I knew I couldn't take revenge like Bob did. I would end up in jail, and my daughter would be hurt because of it. I needed a healthy way to deal with my anger, so I reached out to some guys I knew who had also been divorced. They told me that over time my anger would get better. I started to wonder how long that would take and what they did to get through it. I thought a support group might be helpful, so I called up my divorced friends. I asked each one why they got divorced and for the name of another guy who had also gone through a divorce. I made a list of guys who were divorced because they were cheated on. I didn't want to hear from guys who cheated. They got what they deserved. I also included a few guys who had been cheated on or broken up with before getting married. If they loved the woman, they felt just as bad. Once my list was ready, I invited everyone to my house to talk. I had the meeting catered by a nearby bar. We had lots of snacks and craft beers, plus a grill where everyone could bring their own meat to cook. 15 guys showed up. We had one big session where we shared our stories and then some smaller groups to talk about special issues for divorced guys. I noticed that many of the guys had really nice cars parked on my street, along with trucks and bikes. I thought the evening went well, and it seemed like everyone else thought so too. A big guy named Bill Peck, who was hurt by his high school sweetheart after 23 years of marriage, asked a question many guys were thinking. "Eric, I've really enjoyed meeting you," he said. "It was great to hang out with guys who understand me. When's the next meeting?" "I'll call everyone and let you know," I replied. In the next few days, almost every guy who came called me with ideas and suggestions. Over the next few weeks, we formed a group that was part support, part social club, and part family. Our third get-together was a walkthrough of my empty yoga studio, which I suggested as our clubhouse. We had several members who worked in construction. They volunteered time and materials, and we renovated the whole place. The new setup was very much for guys. There was a big bar with a large TV on every wall. There were lots of places to sit. In the back room, there was a gym with punching bags of all sizes. If someone had a tough day, they could go there and let off some steam. We even had lockers and showers from the yoga studio. I thought about going for runs from the club sometimes. The funniest moment was when the sign for the club went up. Some of the guys were upset when they saw the letters BBC on the building. "Hey," one guy said, "that's how I lost my wife." "I've already got one of those," said a guy in the club. "Didn't help me at all." "Remember when we were younger?" I said. "They had the YMCA and the Boys Club. Now we have the Broken-Hearted Boys Club." The club became popular fast. We had to make rules to only let in guys who were really sad from their breakups. Too many guys looked at all the cars and bikes outside and wanted to join. Even funnier were the women who saw the sign and misunderstood. One of our members, a big guy named Will, was good at turning them away. "Are you ladies interested in the BBC?" he'd ask. They would laugh and nod. "Well, come on out back so I can show you." He would take them to the back of the building and into the alley. He pulled out his phone and took pictures of them. "The pictures are for my wall," he said with a big grin. Then he would close the door, leaving them outside. They would knock, so he would open it. "What?" he yelled. "We didn't get to see it," one woman shouted. "You didn't show us," said another. "We came for the BBC," the last one declared, "and we're not leaving without it." "All right, you asked for it," Will said. He pulled down his pants and let it go right there. "I call that Big Willie style," he joked. "We'll put these pictures on the wall. If they come back, we'll let their husbands know why they were here." The club grew more popular. We took trips, held different activities, and had wild parties. We sometimes had strippers and even went to Vegas, doing all the typical guy things. But deep down, we mostly didn't like women, especially our ex-wives. Until one day, I had a Saturday off. Erica was with Dana and I was at the club. I was washing my car behind the club when she walked up and handed me a microfiber towel. "Thanks," I said, not paying much attention. "You're welcome," she smiled. As soon as I heard her voice, I turned around. "I need a favor," she said. I had never seen brown eyes that sparkled like hers. I knew about warm brown eyes and dark ones, but hers were different. I've heard stories about people who are so rude that their eyes look muddy. But her eyes were bright and shining, and it wasn't just her eyes. Her voice had a special charm. It was rough, but still nice to listen to. I'd say she talked like Stevie Nicks sings. She had a soft southern accent that I found really appealing. It wasn't the annoying country twang or the hard-to-follow Cajun sound. It added a lovely touch to everything she said. As I stood there looking at her, almost too long, it was like everything around me turned upside down. Nothing about her seemed normal. Her legs were very long and her jeans hugged her curves, but her hips were slim. It felt like something strange was happening. When you think about it, she had the best of both worlds. She had rounded curves that made you want to take a closer look, but she didn't have an overly wide shape like some celebrities who looked like they ate too much. Her top half was similar. She had narrow shoulders, but her t-shirt was fitted, which made it seem like there was something strong hidden underneath her shirt. But what really caught my attention was her heart-shaped face, framed by her long, thick, honey blonde hair. I already talked about her bright brown eyes, so I won't repeat that. And her nose was quite small, nothing special. But her full lips could switch from a smile to a pout, creating expressions that were uniquely hers. My feelings were telling me, you can have whatever you want. Sadly, my mind was in control, reminding me of past troubles and heartaches. It whispered, all women can be cruel, and this one is likely worse because she's so stunning. When I finally managed to speak, I said, why would I help you? Because Nancy told me her son-in-law was the nicest man ever. She smiled. It was tough to keep a serious face, but I felt myself softening inside. Honestly, she had me with that last word, ever. What's the favor you need? I asked. I want you to bend the rules of this club where we don't like women, she began. Oh no, I said. That's not going to work. I can't let you. But even as I spoke, part of me was searching for a way to make it happen. Maybe I could say it was a club for everyone hurt by cheating. Perhaps I could claim there was a law that said we had to... Nah, we had too many lawyers around us. There she was, smiling and shaking her head. Not me, Eric, she said with a playful grin. My daddy. Your mom cheated on him? I was shocked. Never, she replied firmly. Her surprise made me feel good. But she did kind of lie to him, she added. That's still bad, I told her. Women can be good at lying. Not all women, she countered. Then she told me a story that sounded like it came from a movie. Her parents were high school sweethearts. They got married and started a family. They had a child. She raised her hand and bowed as she said that. Their life seemed perfect. But then, she got very sick with cancer. Her husband quit his job and sold everything to care for her. He stayed by her side through every test, surgery, and months of treatment. Luckily, she got better. They were both older now, changed by what happened, but they loved each other even more. It took them a long time to pay off the medical bills, but they did it happily. They had beaten cancer. Nothing could stop them now. They built up their savings, sent their daughter to college, and started thinking about retirement. But one day the wife felt she could not wait any longer. She wanted to take a cruise and see Europe, just like they had planned for retirement. As usual, the husband agreed to her wishes. The cruise turned out great. They felt young and in love again. While touring Europe, he noticed she was having a great time but seemed tired often. When he mentioned it, she laughed and said maybe she was pregnant. They both chuckled at that since they were in their 60s. She promised that once they returned to Texas, she'd see a doctor. But on their first night back, she died in her sleep while he held her. She had left him a letter explaining it all. Her cancer had come back stronger than before. Her doctor said she had only 6 months to live, maybe longer if she started treatment right away. He could only try to make her comfortable. He couldn't save her. In her letter, she explained that she didn't have the strength for another fight. She chose to spend her last months enjoying life, not lying in a hospital bed. She wanted to be with the man she loved for as long as she could and have one last adventure. She asked his forgiveness for not being honest, but she wanted to decide how to go. Her doctor had supported her choice and gave her medicine to ease her pain. She felt nothing but love for her husband. She wanted him to continue living, and she would be waiting for him in the next life. "My daddy is a strong man," she said. But he cried for a whole week. After that, he just started thanking. When he had all his thoughts together, he got angry. He felt that his mom had lied to him, and he hated her for it. I tried to help him feel better, but I realized I needed support. I wanted to get him out of the house and around other guys. I knew his pain was different from what you all were going through, but I thought you all could understand him well. I agreed to go and meet him. A few days later, I went with Will and Barney. We talked to him and liked him. He didn't know that his daughter had set this up. He thought we were just trying to bring people together. We had all been hurt by women, so we understood each other's pain, even if our reasons were different. What really caught his attention was his truck. He had a huge F-250 that shined bright. It was the biggest, most impressive truck I had ever seen. "Can you pull a big trailer with that truck?" I asked him. "I could pull a whole building," he said, "unless there's a heavy person on it." We were impressed. That's how Tom became part of our group. The club kept growing and became more active. We took trips and did all sorts of activities together. About 3 months after Tom joined, I noticed we had a new problem. We were camping in the UP, which means the upper part of Michigan, for those who don't know. We were spread out doing different things in the woods. Some of us were fishing, some were hiking, while others relaxed at the campsite, drinking and chatting. I saw a flash on a ridge above us. I wondered if someone might be hunting nearby or if it was one of those people who complain about our trucks and bikes or the way we treated the forest. So I quietly went up to the ridge to check it out. But it was her. I touched her shoulder and she dropped her binoculars. "Wow, Eric, you scared me," she laughed, lightly hitting my shoulder. Her hand lingered on my shoulder and it felt strange, like my skin wanted to stay close to her. Then her eyes widened and she quickly pulled her hand away as if my shoulder had burned her. "Oh, I forgot. You don't like women," she said with a smirk. "Jenny, what are you doing here? And why are you alone?" I asked. "I'm not alone," she shot back. "Ralph is with me." I couldn't help it. A quick flash of jealousy ran through me. But then I thought it over. A glance at her face told me she had seen my reaction. "You'd have to be crazy to go up against Ralph," she said. Looking around, I noticed a tiny tent with one sleeping bag inside. "You two must be really close," I said. "We've been staying together since I was about 11 or 12, she said with a smirk. "Do you want to meet him?" My jealousy was boiling, and I felt angry. "No, I just wanted to check if you were okay," I said. "That sounds tough," she said softly. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Fighting with yourself," she explained. "You and my dad are a lot alike. He still cries about my mom sometimes, but when he wakes up, she turns into someone he can't stand. Being with you guys really helps him. You all have so much fun that he doesn't think about her for too long." I understood that feeling. I knew what she was talking about. For many of the guys in the club, it was like a fresh start. "I'm not like that," I said. "I hardly think about my ex." "No, you're done with that," she said. "But you're still struggling. It's time to move on, but you want to stay in your own little sad space. I was surprised and stared at her. You never told me what you and Ralph are doing here, I said to change the subject. My dad, Eric, is huge, and even though he's almost 60, he's really strong, she said with sadness. But not even that can stop him from hurting himself. Don't tell anyone, but he almost joined my mom a couple of times. As much as he says he hates her, he misses her a lot. I was shocked. I never would have thought Tom would feel that way. Jenny, I didn't know what to say. You and Ralph need to be careful. When people go missing and are found dead, it usually happens in the deep woods. That's why we always stick together. Where's Ralph now? In the tent, she said with a smirk. She walked over to her small tent and bent down. At that moment, I forgot all about Ralph, camping, and everything else. All I could think about was the view of her tan legs showing from her shorts. When she turned her head and saw me staring, I felt my face get really hot. Do you want to meet Ralph or just keep staring at me? She teased. They say that men can only think with one part of their body at a time. At that moment, I wasn't thinking clearly, so I just said what came to mind. Do I have a choice? I asked. Her smile lit up the area around us. You're quite the charmer when you want to be, she said happily. Then she stood up and walked back to me. That's when I saw what she was holding. This is Ralph, she said proudly. I started laughing. It turned out Ralph was a 12-gauge double-barreled shotgun. Anyone who messes with me has to deal with Ralph, she smirked, her eyes sparkling again. Well, at least the ones I don't want to mess with. Eric! Eric! I heard voices calling my name from our campsite. I grabbed her hand and ran down the trail. What are you doing? I ain't, she said, trying to defend herself. As we arrived at the camp, my friends looked happy at first, but then surprised when they spotted Jenny. What the? One of them said. It's a girl, another exclaimed. It's just my daughter, Tom chimed in, looking at her with a frown. Checking on me again, huh? He asked her. I'm fine. You can leave now that you see I'm okay. Not so fast, I said. The sun is setting. Remember how hard it was to drive on those trails to get here? She's not going to drive in the dark. We planned to leave in the morning anyway. She's staying the night. But what about singing by the campfire? One person asked. She's heard bad singing before, I chuckled. But what about our, talking session? Another asked. I have a couple of classic movies in my car, I replied. Her dad's truck has a DVD player. She won't have to listen to us talking too much, and she'll be comfortable. Hey, I was going to share a tent with Tom, Will said. The best place for her to sleep is with her dad. She has her own tent up there on the hill, I said. But I can see her sleeping in her dad's truck. I brought extra blankets. She and Ralph will be just fine. Who the heck is Ralph? That question ended the talk as everyone went back to what they were doing. For the rest of the evening, Jenny tried to stay out of sight. The guys mostly ignored her. She stuck around either with me or her dad, but it was mostly me since he was not happy about her being there. The next morning, I helped her pack her small tent and sleeping bag into her Ford Fusion. That wasn't so bad, was it? She asked. What do you mean? I replied. Being around one of those bad women, she teased, leaning against her car. Nancy was right. You really are nice. Her daughter is foolish. I felt a strong urge to kiss her. Drive safe, I said, turning away. Still fighting it, huh? She laughed. Dana, get up! You're late for work. My mom's voice broke through my tiredness like a shovel hitting a big mess. I don't have to go to work today, I mumbled. I took a few days off. That was a silly thing to do, Dana, she replied. You have Erica coming next week. You should have chosen that time. My head was all foggy from the drinks. Why can't I have a few days of special treatment? I shouted. Why don't I ever get to relax and breathe? She shot back at me. You had that for 10 years, remember? You divorced him, remember? Now you have to work and handle things like the rest of us. I got up and realized I was still wearing the same clothes from last night. Dana, you look terrible and smell like alcohol, she said. I walked past her and into the bathroom. Mom, I'm not a kid anymore, I said. I'm over 30. It's fine for me to relax and enjoy myself now and then. I can manage it. It's part of my plan. Besides, I can't do much for a whole year anyway, so I might as well have some fun now so I don't mess up later. Dana, what are you saying? She asked. The articles I read online all say that a guy needs a year or two to really get over being hurt. If I go back to Eric too soon, he'll just get angrier at me. Right now, Eric is really mad. Did you know he's leading a group that dislikes women? Yeah, I knew that, she said. But I never knew why. Now it makes sense. Eric is too nice to act like that without a good reason. You cheated on him. I thought my mom was going to faint. The last few months have been tough. My relationships have fallen apart. My parents look at me like I'm useless. I feel like a weight dragging them down. My daughter looks at me like I've left her behind. I tried to tell her it was Eric's fault I moved out. I said I would come back the moment Eric wanted me to. I didn't say anything bad about Eric, but I was getting tired of hearing how well he was doing. If I heard one more time how Daddy got a raise or a promotion, I might scream. Even our old friends seem to stay away from me. The few who do talk to me always ask about Eric or tell me what he's up to. Don't they get that being away from him is really hard for me? The only person who really understood me was Peggy. After giving me some bad advice, she felt so guilty that she wanted to help me adjust and maybe win Eric back. Peggy suggested I let loose and have some fun. Think about it, Dana, she said. You're not cheating if you're not married. We went out a lot. I met a lot of guys, too. It wasn't something I planned, but it just happened. The first time, well, let's just say it wasn't good. We were out celebrating, and it might sound silly, but we were celebrating how much Eric loved me, which made him start his group. Peggy told me about some friends of hers who went to the club thinking they would hook up with some guys, but they ended up having a very bad experience. Eric was there, and it seemed like he was in charge. Peggy said that made him the perfect target for me to win back. I just needed to give him some space to really miss me, and then he'd be easy to win back. Anyway, we went out to have a good time. I drank a lot and celebrated hard. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a cheap motel room, feeling terrible with a headache and a bad feeling, covered in a mess. I felt so bad. Things like that had already cost me my marriage. Peggy told me I was still young and needed to enjoy life a bit. So after a couple of months, I thought I was done with that part of my life. Actually, I couldn't even remember why I started that craziness. The fling with my yoga teacher was just a quick mistake that never should have put my marriage at risk. I would go out and be with the old guy and then come home ready for my husband. Eric was clueless. What we did together was so much more than the basic stuff many guys called sex. In truth, I was looking for something like what we used to have, and that was what was missing in all the brief encounters I had lately. Peggy helped me to see what the real issue was. I had been telling her how bad the guys I had been with were. Dana, you're just using them, she said. You don't love them and they don't love you. It's just for fun. At that moment, I realized that I had been searching for something I already had. The reason Eric was so great in bed was that he loved me. He cared if I was happy. I knew I would never find that again. And with every guy I was with, the chance kept growing that he knew Eric. If word got out, I'd never get him back. As I thought more, I realized I had a problem. My mom was right. I had Erica coming over the next week, but I had promised Peggy I would go to Vegas with her. I also needed to find a new job. I had missed too many days and was always late, so they fired me. My work quality had dropped a lot since the divorce, and I knew it. I was too wrapped up in my own issues to see it clearly. I would get a new job as soon as I got back from Vegas. I also needed to find a place to live. My stay at my parents' house was becoming a bit hard on everyone. Plus, Eric didn't let me stay at our house after I messed it up the second time. Thinking about it, I actually started to feel good about calling him to ask if he could keep Erica for one more week. I was sure he would agree, but he would want to follow the schedule. That meant he would have her for 3 weeks straight. For not being her real father, he sure loved her a lot. I felt bad as soon as I thought it. Eric used to love me just like that, and it was my choice that we were apart. Eric loved Erica so much because I made him believe she was his daughter, but I really thought she was. The girl looked just like him. Before the school did that DNA test, I wasn't sure about anything. I had been with at least 4 guys when I found out I was pregnant. 2 of them were just one-night stands. Another guy left right after I told him. Eric was the only one who said, "Let's get married." I had my own struggles, too. During our marriage, I sometimes really wanted to have another baby. I mean, really wanted it, but I couldn't. I worried that the new baby wouldn't look like Erica. Or worse, what if the baby looked just like Mark? The differences would be too clear. I couldn't take that chance. If only I had thought differently about sex. Maybe I would still be with Eric. I could have my perfect life instead of living at my parents' home feeling like a failure. I took a deep breath and hoped for the best. "Hello," he said. Just hearing his voice made me feel a bit better. "Eric, I need a favor," I started. "Why ask me? We're not married anymore," he replied. His tone felt careless, like he didn't care about me anymore. "It's about Erica," I said. "You know, our daughter." His tone changed right away. It was as if he was distracted before, but now he was focused on me. "I have to go out of town next week, so can you keep her?" I asked. "Wow," he said. "I'm going on a cruise." "A cruise!" I snapped. I was really upset. I had no money and he was going on a cruise without me. "I have an idea," he said. "I'll call you back." I couldn't believe it. I figured he might find someone to take his spot on the cruise. It took him about 20 minutes to get back to me. "I figured it out," he said. "You enjoy your trip." The more I thought about it, the more I wished I could go on the cruise with him, but he never suggested it. He knew that going on a cruise was something I had always wanted to do. I wanted to say something, but he had already hung up. I called him back. "What's up, Dana?" he asked. "I just wanted to thank you and say I'm sorry you're going to miss the cruise," I said. "Erica has a great dad." "I'm taking her on the cruise with me," he said. "I talked to her teacher. She can skip 5 days of school and she'll have a great time." "Bye, Dana." Somehow that phone call made me feel even worse. I called Peggy to tell her I could go to Vegas with her. "What happens in Vegas?" she exclaimed. "Follows you home and ruins your life," I said. "Weren't you worried that your ex-husband might know some of the guys you were seeing?" she asked. "Now you'll just have new guys from a different state. And remember, he's your ex." "But I don't want him to be just an ex," I said. "Did you know he's going on a cruise? I can't even take care of a place, and he's going on a cruise without me." "So you're leaving the kid with your parents?" she asked. "No," I cried. "He's taking her with him on the cruise. He hadn't planned it, but it just happened." "Let's just go to Vegas and have some fun," she said. "That will be way better than sitting here feeling bad that your ex is going on a cruise." "But how will we pay for it?" I asked. "I have a rich friend there who always throws parties," she replied. "He does this to keep his out-of-town clients happy and away from the casinos. He likes to have pretty women at his parties. Trust me, there will be lots of women besides us." I felt uneasy from the start. I called my daughter because I knew Eric wouldn't want to hear from me. She was almost too happy to talk. All she could talk about was the flyer Eric had given her about the cruise ship and all the fun things to do on board. The more she read to me, the angrier I got. It sounded like a vacation I had always wanted. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the cruise could be a good chance to reconnect with Eric. I called the cruise line that Erica had said was in charge of the trip. They told me 2 things. The first was the price for a cabin on the ship. My mind raced when I heard it. The second was even worse. Besides a few cabins reserved for groups, the ship was all booked up. That made sense. Eric's group had likely booked a block of cabins at a lower price. He had probably called a few people and rearranged things to get a bigger cabin for himself and his daughter. This only made things more complicated for me. Our separation had changed our family in ways I hadn't expected. I had focused on my relationship with Eric, but had ignored my relationship with my daughter. While Erica grew closer to her father, she and I had drifted apart. I promised myself I would work on that bond as soon as I returned from Vegas. The problem was that I was postponing a lot of things. I was going to find a job. Later. I was going to get my own place. Later. I was going to win Eric back. Later. Now I was going to fix things with my daughter. Later. That was a long list of later. Eric's I didn't understand why I was so anxious. I had talked with the guys, and there were no issues. All 40 members of the group were on board the ship. I wasn't the only one who brought someone along. Many of us did. Some guys even brought extra guests, like brothers. I wasn't the only one who had the courage to bring a woman, either. Will brought his mother, and she was quite the character. I had told the guys that I either had to skip the trip or bring Erica with me. They decided that I should definitely bring my daughter. Most of the guys had seen her before, and had even played video games with her on the big screens during our poker nights at the clubhouse. The main problem was that I wanted Erica to enjoy everything on the cruise, but she was only 10. I couldn't let her wander around by herself while I made sure everything was running smoothly for the club. This was one of the things that made life easier when I was married. Whatever one of us couldn't do for our daughter, the other took care of. It may not take a whole village to take care of a child, but it really helps to have two parents. I really didn't want to invite Dana. Just talking to her made me feel sick. My first thought was to ask Erica's grandparents. Nancy liked the idea but wasn't sure her husband could go. His recovery was taking a lot longer than we thought. Nancy believed that some of it was in his mind. She thought he was scared to try anything because he didn't want to have another heart problem. So he was, in her words, just sitting there holding his chest. This situation limited my choices. So, with some hesitation, okay, maybe not much hesitation, I called in a favor. There I was on the ship's deck watching people come up the ramp, wondering where she was. I felt my daughter looking at something, but I kept my focus on the crowd coming aboard. "Have you been waiting long?" I heard that soft Texas drawl, but she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to Erica. "Jenny!" my daughter squealed with excitement. "I love your outfit!" I turned and almost lost my balance. During the flight from Michigan to the coast, Erica had barely let go of my hand. This was all new for her, but in an instant she was chatting with a complete stranger. How did she know her name? Jenny was stunning. That's the only way to say it. She was dressed neatly from head to knees, but still looked amazing. Her outfit was fantastic. She wore one of those stylish hats with a light veil that made her face stand out. The hat was white and her dress was navy blue and fit her perfectly. It showed off her curves nicely. A white belt that matched the hat hugged her small waist. The dress highlighted her slim hips, shapely legs, and round backside. Her white heels were so high she looked like she could fall. She noticed me staring and gave a little laugh. "You're staring again," she said with a smirk. I started to explain. "I was just worried you might not make it." "Daddy and I got here before you on the plane," she laughed. "We've been here since breakfast. I already found all the fun things for us to do," said Jenny. "Hey, what about me?" Erica chimed in. "I want to join in on the fun too." "I was talking about me and you, sweetie," Jenny replied with a smile. "Your dad has to hang out with the boys, but if he's really good, maybe we'll let him join us sometimes." For the next 4 days, we had a blast. I made sure my friends were having a great time. Plus, I got to know each of them a little more. Most of my time was spent watching or hanging out with my daughter Erica and Jenny. The three of us had a special bond, even though I seemed to lose every game we played. 2 days before we were set to leave, things suddenly changed. Erica and Jenny were headed to one of the pools on the ship. Erica was trying to teach Jenny how to swim better. In return, Jenny promised to teach Erica how to ride a horse when we got back home. I was supposed to judge our club's first annual diving and belly flop contest. But after the first dive, the 8 contestants decided to skip the contest and start the first annual afternoon beer drinking contest instead. With no need for a judge now, I walked over to the pool to watch my 10-year-old daughter teach a grown woman how to swim. I sat down on a deck chair next to a man I'd seen around the ship often enough to talk to. He was with a group of guys and seemed friendly. He was the kind of guy who loved to make jokes and thought that made him very charming. "That girl needs to stop teasing me and come over here," he said. I just frowned at him. "Who?" one of his friends asked. "Right there," he pointed. "The girl with the long brown hair. You can tell she's hiding a great figure under that swimsuit. She wants me. She keeps leaning over right in front of me." I sat up straight and looked at him seriously. "If you guys weren't here, she'd probably already be." He didn't finish his sentence because I lost my temper. I jumped up, ready to throw the hardest punch I could, but I was stopped by a strong hand holding my arm back. I turned and saw it was Tom. "Looks like I got here just in time," he said. "And this isn't unrelated to what I wanted to talk about." "What happened?" the chubby joke teller asked. "Do you know her or something? I thought you guys were part of that group that doesn't like women." Looks like it wasn't his lucky day. The guy just couldn't stop saying silly things in front of the wrong people. When he mentioned a gay club, Tom snapped and hit him in the face so hard that his chair broke and fell over. His friend quickly put his hands up in the air, showing he wanted no part of this mess. "He deserved it," said Tom. "Can't argue with that," his friend said quickly. Soon, people gathered around us. 2 crew members came over to see what was happening. His chair just fell down out of nowhere, I lied. He was a bit drunk, but don't worry, Commodore. You and the Admiral can go back to work. We'll handle this. The crew members shrugged and walked away just as the guy started to wake up. What happened? He asked, sounding confused. You talked too much. Maybe twice, his friend said. I only said they were in a gay club, the chubby guy replied. Who cares about that? Except it's not a gay club, Will said. Some people might not like that. Looks like someone didn't. I'll buy you a beer and explain. Are you okay? Jenny asked, looking at my face for any signs of hurt. I almost hit a guy, I replied. I'm the one that had to hit him, said Tom. He didn't let me hit him, I said. It's all right, Eric, she said. You can hit the next one. Wow, said Tom. Why did you almost hit him? She asked. The guy was staring at you, said Tom. I thought that was your job, she teased. Jenny. Sweetheart, go get ready for dinner, said Tom. Eric and I need to talk about club business. We sat under an umbrella to chat. Eric, you're a good guy, so I'm going to be honest with you, he said. I felt nervous right away. I like being part of this club, he said. So we need to talk about its future. I felt both uneasy and confused. What would happen if you decided to, quit, he asked, or just move on? Why would I do that? I wondered. Eric, last night we had dinner at the same table, he began. What did Jenny eat? She had the spaghetti with that odd sauce and shrimp, I replied. What did I eat? He asked. I was blank. See what I mean? He said. Not really, I said. Jenny always wears jeans and t-shirts. Once she heard about this cruise, she started buying new clothes like crazy, he explained. Okay, I said, still puzzled. I'm a strong guy, he said, but I know not to stand in the way of 2 trains that are about to crash. Some things can't be stopped. He took a long sip of his beer and was about to say something, but I saw Jenny coming toward us with my daughter Erica. Daddy, we're tired of eating in restaurants, Erica announced. We wanted to grab some food from the dinner buffet and sit outside on the deck. Okay, I replied. I noticed my daughter, who had always lived in the suburbs, was starting to speak with a drawl. She was beginning to drop her G's and stretch out her words. What did you and my daddy talk about? Jenny asked. Was it a secret that only special members can know? I have no idea, I said. We talked about what you and he had for dinner. We talked about the club, about you needing more clothes, and then we chatted about trains. I need a favor, she smiled at me. I nodded. Aren't you going to ask what it is? She teased. It's a big one, she said. Okay, I shrugged. What do I have to do? Get dressed and take me dancing, she said. Okay, I replied. Erica will probably be asleep before dinner is done. All that swimming wore her out. Ella will babysit her. Okay, I said. Yeah? She smiled. Her happiness lit up the space. I had never seen anything like it. I asked Tom and Willie to help me out during the night. They both seemed happy to do it. Where will you be? Asked Tom. I swallowed. His eyes were staring at me. I'm going dancing, I said. Trains, huh? He grumbled. You can't stop them. Yeah, said Willie, looking just as confused as I was. 10 minutes later, I was in the shower getting ready. I looked in the mirror and changed my tie. Then I switched my shirt. I put on a black suit for some reason. I had a couple of blue suits, but the black one felt right tonight. I wore a black shirt and picked a bright yellow tie for a pop of color. But then, I decided on a red bow tie instead. I felt like a secret agent. I just needed a vodka martini. Shaken, not stirred. I was proud of how I looked. I knocked on Jenny's door and she opened it before I could knock again. Shh, she whispered. She's trying to fight going to sleep. Where are we going? My daughter asked, struggling to keep her eyes open. I love you, Daddy, she mumbled as she settled on the sofa. I carried her back to her bed. When I turned, Jenny was watching me, and my heart skipped a beat. She looked beautiful. Her little black dress was simple but captivating, but it was her lovely face that I couldn't take my eyes off. When she smiled at me, I felt a rush. We didn't really dance. We just stood still on the dance floor, holding each other close. Sure, we swayed a bit, but it felt more like one long hug. Once, between songs, I went to get us drinks. I got Jenny a glass of chilled white wine and me a vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. For someone who doesn't usually like women, you sure feel good, she said. I feel so warm and safe. Just then, I ran out of the ballroom and leaned over the ship's railing. I spit several times. I looked at Jenny and saw a mix of fear, worry, and laughter on her face. "What's wrong?" she asked. "My drink," I said. "It tastes terrible." She took a sip and started to spit it out, too. "It tastes like medicine," she said. "What is it?" "A vodka martini, shaken, not stirred," I said with pride. "Why did you order that?" she asked. I frowned. "Eric, you can tell me anything," she urged gently. "I ordered it because—" I mumbled. She smiled, encouraging me to continue. "Jenny, being with you makes me do silly things," I admitted. "I felt like James Bond all dressed up for you, so I ordered his drink. I'm not a big fan of Travis Tritt, but you make me feel amazing." She put her small hand over my mouth. "That would have worked," she said, taking a breath. "What?" I exclaimed. I felt lightheaded, almost like I was drunk from just that one bad drink. "If you were trying to impress me, that would have worked," she said. "We should dance before I do something embarrassing." I took her hand and we stepped back onto the shiny dance floor. There were so many lights in the room, but none were as bright as her two brown eyes looking into mine. If we hadn't been dancing before, this time was even more intense. Our feet barely moved. We just stood there, wrapped up in each other. "Eric, I can't breathe," she said. I tried to loosen my hold, but she tightened hers. "It's not that," she said. "You can hold me as tight as you want, but it feels like there isn't enough air in here." We walked onto the deck and into the moonlight. It felt like we were the only two people in the world. Only she and I mattered. Under that big moon, we felt lost, but also free. It was like a strong force pulling us together. I heard a voice in my head that said, "You can't fight this." Then our lips touched, and time seemed to stop. It felt like we were caught in something much bigger than us. The world spun around us, and I never wanted that kiss to end. But it did. And then something changed. When I caught Dana with her new boyfriend and saw who she really was, I felt like my heart had stopped. I felt empty, like a shell. But when I kissed Jenny, my heart started to beat again. It was louder, stronger, and prouder than ever before. Instead of feeling empty, I felt so full that I thought I might burst. "Jenny, I stammered. "I know, silly," she said with excitement. "Just stop talking and kiss me again." In my head, I thought this was a perfect moment. I wanted to grab that moment and keep it on a shelf so I could think about it when things got tough. But then, reality hit hard. "What the heck?" yelled an angry voice from behind us. "Hey! Oh no! That's Eric!" said another voice. "Some woman is attacking him!" shouted someone else. "Darn trains!" said a voice I recognized. "You can't stop them!" In a flash, my perfect moment vanished. In less than a second, I went from feeling powerful to feeling small and embarrassed. I stood there in front of my angry friends. Some looked mad, some looked confused, and others seemed disappointed. I had no words to say, but then a small hand slipped into mine. I felt a spark of energy. I realized I didn't need to say anything. The guys in my club were my friends, and true friends understand. True friends would be happy for me. So I fought the urge to say sorry. I hadn't done anything wrong. "Guys, we arrive in the morning," I started. "As soon as we get back, we'll meet to talk about what's next. Until then, Tom and Will take charge. Good night." They all looked puzzled and hurt. Will turned to Tom. "For 3 whole days, you've been talking about those darn trains," he said. "That's what you meant? Why didn't you just say it clearly? We could have found a way to stop it." "How can we stop it, Will?" asked Tom. "When something is that strong, you can't stop it. You just have to move out of the way." The next morning was strange. It was quietly tense, like the pause before a storm. I thought my friends might try to talk things over with me, but when trouble came, it was from a totally different place. I woke up early, which was silly. I wanted to stay asleep and dream about Jenny some more, but I wanted to see her even more. I was really happy when she and my daughter arrived, ready for breakfast. While many people were still sleeping or getting ready to leave the ship, the 3 of us sat on a high deck, watching nervously as the giant ship docked. It felt like we might crash at any moment, but the skilled crew made it look easy. We didn't feel even the smallest bump when we settled in. The sun was shining in the sky, and it was just after noon when everything went wrong. I remember we were walking together, Jenny holding Erica's left hand and me holding her right when I felt it. It scared me until I realized what it was. My phone was ringing. "Eric," said a voice on the line. "Where are you? Are you still on the cruise? We have a big problem." "Did Dad have another attack?" I asked. "I almost did," he said. Hearing his voice made me feel better. "Is Erica with you?" Nancy asked. "Yep, she's here," I replied. "Make sure she can't hear us," Nancy said. "My phone isn't on speaker," I said. "The boat just docked." "Oh, that's good news," Nancy said. "For you, maybe," her husband said. "I can't handle much more of this." "Eric, how soon can you get to Las Vegas?" Nancy asked. "It'll take about 5 hours if we rent a car and drive," I said, "but we could fly in a little over an hour if it's an emergency." "Eric, it is an emergency," she said. "But you can't bring Erica. She shouldn't see this." "Nancy, we already have our plane tickets to go home," I said. "I could change my ticket for a later flight to Vegas and then go home from there. What's going on?" She explained what happened, and I felt angry again. "Daddy, why is your face red?" Erica asked. "Jenny, I need a favor," I said. "No," she answered, surprising me. But last night I helped you with something." I started, but she put her hand over my mouth. "Last night was amazing," she said. "But things are different now. Friends help each other, but we're past that. If you need something, just ask, and I'll do it because I care about you." "Ooh, Daddy and Jenny sitting in a tree," sang Erica. "Kissing. "I need you to take Erica home," I said. "I have to go to Vegas." Her face became serious, and she nodded. "I'll call you as soon as I can," I promised her. "Eric, I always call you," she laughed. "Do you even have my number?" "Of course," I said. "I got it off the wall. For a good time, call 867 to 5,309 inches. "I hate that song," she said, annoyed. "Dana Life must hate me. I woke up again with a bad headache. This time, I knew where I was and why." "You're awake, huh?" Peggy said. I turned away from her. I didn't want to hear anything from her. I was in a small room with about 20 other women. A police officer came in and called us one by one to use the phone. Some of the women had already called someone the night before. The ones who were too drunk or high had to wait until morning. It was 9 a.m., so in Michigan, it had to be afternoon. With the phone ready, I thought about my options. There were only 2 people I could call. If I called my mother, she would be mad. If I called my husband, my life would be ruined. There was no way to save my marriage if I called Eric. I dialed my mother's number and spoke to her. I kept it short. I didn't want to give her anything to use against me. My mom was way too friendly with my husband for my liking. If I told her about my troubles, he might find out. The phone rang and she picked up on the 3rd ring. "Mom, I'm in trouble," I said. "Dana, you always seem to be in trouble," she said with a laugh. "Mom, I'm in jail," I said. "Well, that's one way to have your own place," she joked. "Mom, this is serious," I said. "Someone needs to come and get me out. You can use a credit card, but you must be here in person." "What about a bail bondsman?" she asked. "I can't afford that," I replied. "What did you do?" she asked. "I'm not really sure," I lied. "It's one of those silly tourist things. You know, laws can be different from state to state. Things we do all the time in Michigan can be illegal here." "How much is your bail?" she asked. $2,000, I said. "Oh, so you only need 200 to get out, right?" she asked. "No, Mom," I replied. "Since I live in a different state, they think I might run away. I need $2,000 to be released." "Where are you right now?" she asked. I gave her the details. "Let me make a couple of calls and see what I can do," she said. "It might take some time, but it's not like you're going anywhere." Then she hung up. When I got back to the holding cell, Peggy was waiting for me. "Can you get me out too?" she asked. "Why would I even think about that?" I replied. "Because I'm your best friend," she smiled. "Peggy, you got me into this mess," I said. "I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for you." "Dana, a lot of men were with you last night, but all I wanted was for you to have some fun," she said. I wasn't sure who was worse, her for saying that or me for going along with it after her terrible advice during my divorce. But honestly, I was in this situation because of my own choices. Everything that went wrong in my life was my fault. I once thought the rules didn't apply to me. In college, it was my first time away from home, and I went a little wild. Lots of girls do. Lots of guys do too. I was finally in charge of my own choices. I was young, I was cute, and I was taking birth control. What could possibly go wrong? Everything was fun until I found out I was pregnant. Then the guys ran off like scared bugs when the lights came on. They had all been brave enough to be with me, but when it got serious, Eric was the only one who stuck around. He was right there beside me. Maybe he was a bit naive, or maybe just not very smart. I think he was both. He also seemed to really care about me. The right thing for me to do would have been to tell him the truth. I should have said that I had been with other guys and I didn't know who the father was. A DNA test during or right after the pregnancy could have saved us a lot of trouble. And maybe, if he loved me as much as he said, he would have stayed anyway. But he never asked for a test. He just accepted things and loved us no matter what. That made me feel like I could get away with anything. I thought that if I had got through that, I could make anything work. Eric wasn't my ideal guy. I had always dreamed of strong men who would sweep me off my feet, but over time, I found that I grew to like him. We shared a good connection that developed over the years. I acted like the perfect wife, rewarding myself by sometimes being with other guys. I thought I had settled for Eric. One day I realized that he wasn't so bad after all, and I could have chosen someone worse. We had the perfect family. Until Erica started school and I decided to do that DNA test. Luckily, I had never told Eric about it. It was a last-minute choice. I searched the house for something to send as a sample. I ended up sending a few hairs from his comb and forgot about it after that. When the results came back, it took me some time to understand what they meant. I sat there looking at the paper, realizing the trouble it could cause for my family. I tore up the paper and then shredded the pieces. After that, I emptied the shredder and burned everything until it was ash. I then washed the ashes away with the garden hose. In the following years, Eric and I, well, mostly I fell in love. He was already there. Our relationship felt playful in a way that many couples didn't have. Then I messed it all up by getting involved with a yoga teacher who was in her 50s. Peggy just kept the fire of my problems going. She didn't start it. I had been so wrapped up in my thoughts that time flew by. They had to call my name 3 times before Peggy shook me to get my attention. "Your bail has been arranged," said the officer at the door. "Come this way and we have forms for you to sign. You can go back to Michigan, but if you don't show up for your hearing in 60 days, your bail will be taken away and a warrant will be issued for your arrest." I couldn't help but smile. My mom had come through for me after all. "See you later, Peg," I called back. My happiness quickly faded when I realized what my mom had done. She had just done what I often did with my problems. She had pushed them aside for later. Eric was sitting in the room waiting for me. The look of disappointment and disgust on his face was not as bad as I had thought it would be. It was like he could no longer be surprised by anything I did, or maybe he just didn't care about me anymore. "Prostitution!" he shouted. "How can you get arrested for prostitution in a place where it's legal?" Sir," one of the police officers said. "It has to happen in a place that has a license and in an area where it's allowed. We can't let women just come here and act like they did." "So if the government can't make money from it, it's not legal," Eric said. "Exactly," the officer replied. The flight back to Michigan felt like the longest and most tense time ever. Eric sat so far away from me that it felt like we were strangers. It was like he was afraid to touch me, worried that he might catch something from me. "Eric, thanks for coming to get me," I said. "I know we're divorced and all that. Could you maybe come back for my hearing?" "I'm not sure," he replied. "Eric, even if we're divorced," I said, "we have a child. There must be some feelings left between us. If there were none, you wouldn't have come to help. What will you be doing in early June?" He looked over at me and smiled. It wasn't a mean smile. It was a true, happy smile, as if he had just thought of something wonderful. "Jenny wants a wedding in June," he said. "I think I'll be getting married or on my honeymoon." And he was right. They married just before my hearing, and they were on their honeymoon while I went back to Las Vegas. The woman he married, Jenny, is really nice and very beautiful. She and Eric remind me of lights that shine brighter when they are close. The closer they get, the more they glow. The hardest part for me is knowing that my mom somehow helped bring them together. But it never would have happened if I hadn't pushed Eric away. My tendency to avoid problems finally caught up with me. I pushed things too far and ran out of chances to get Eric back. I got 2 years of probation where I had to check in within 2 hours for random drug tests. I couldn't afford to fly back and forth, and the drug tests made it impossible for me, so I had to move to Vegas. Eric had no problem taking care of our daughter, Erica, full-time. To his credit, he brought her to Vegas to see me at least once a month and made sure I was part of every decision about her life. He flew her to Vegas, and the three of us, plus Jenny, talked when Erica decided to stop swimming. It turned out to be a great choice because she was a strong swimmer, but she might also go to the Olympics for horse jumping. After I moved back to Michigan, I lived a simple life with my parents until my dad passed away from his second heart attack. Now my mom and I live together, and I have a good job at a company that Eric started. I hope to meet my next Mr. Right someday. Epilogue. For such a beautiful woman, it surprises me how much more beautiful my wife looks when she's really happy. As I looked at her face, I couldn't move, stuck between being close and not. "Eric," she said with a pout. "You're staring again. We don't have much time. Erica will be back from feeding the horses in about 10 minutes. I smiled at her while she moved her body to get me to start again. "Make me happy, please. I'll do whatever you want," she said. "You can have your fun tonight when we get home, I promise. Just a few more strokes and she was purring like a kitten again. I pulled her closer to me, harder and faster. She loved it. Her face changed into that angelic look she gets when she really lets go. I lost control with her and we held each other tightly. "You are so silly," she said with a smirk. "Don't I get to have my fun?" I asked. "I love you." "Silly. You can have your fun whenever you want." "I was just wondering if you noticed anything." She smiled at me, and I reached into the drawer by the bed to grab my favorite Ray-Bans. Her smile was so bright I had to put on shades. "Is it that you look even more beautiful?" I said. Just then, Erica burst into the room. "Oh my God, you smell like a horse," I said. "I was feeding them," she said. We had moved into a bigger house with space for 2 horses and a corral for Erica to train in. There were also trails nearby for her to ride and for me to run. But we were still in a busy part of Michigan, so my daughter's Texas accent showed she spent a lot of time with Jenny. "Has he figured it out yet?" she asked. "No," said Jenny. "Why is he wearing sunglasses in bed?" asked Erica. "He thinks he's funny," said Jenny. "I'm going to give him a hint," said Erica. "Daddy, how many people live in this house?" "5, I said. "You, me, Jenny, and your 2 horses." "Nope," she said with a smirk. "It's 4. Did one of the horses die?" I asked. "Of course not," she said. "I said people and that live in the house." Realizing she had already said 4, I thought for a moment. "Is your grandpa coming to stay with us?" "He's kind of silly, isn't he?" she asked Jenny. "But he's cute," said Jenny. My 11-year-old daughter could not hold back any longer. "We're having a baby, Daddy," she said excitedly. All I could do was sit up in bed, staring at Jenny in disbelief. She nodded. It was one of the happiest days I could remember. Jenny and I loved each other completely, and we planned to stay together forever. My life felt great. Tom had asked me to help with his truck rental business. This gave me a smart idea to use some trucks to start a service that delivered medical equipment to homes. In just 2 years, the medical delivery service made 3 to 4 times more money than the truck rentals. We also began setting up the equipment. Later, we started repairing it too. With many older people in our community, anything related to healthcare was making a lot of money. Dana, my ex-wife, worked as a clerk in one of our locations. We didn't talk much. Too much has happened between us. Sometimes it still hurts to think about what she did. But we could come together when we needed to. One of those times was about 8 years after the divorce. Our daughter Erica was about to turn 18. She was the U.S. champion in horse jumping and still the light of my life. Jenny and I had 2 other kids, but Erica was our special one. We loved all of our children, but we shared a special bond with her. She was getting ready to go to college to study veterinary science, focusing on horses. Dana and I talked and decided there was no need to tell Erica about her birth. or that I wasn't her biological father. Sometimes telling the truth can cause more pain than comfort. I was no longer part of the BBC. I spoke at a special meeting right after the cruise. In my speech, I told the members that my time with them was over. The club was meant to help us heal during hard times. I didn't need that support anymore, and I hoped that the others would heal too. I left Tom and Will in charge and gave them the lease for the club. A year later, Will left the club to marry Peggy. They now have 6 kids together. I guess she found her happiness. Hey, audience! If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.